Hello, my name is Carina, and in this podcast, Break Fear, Find Freedom, I have conversations with people just like you who have broken their fear and found their freedom, whatever that may be. And shows you how to do the same. So sit back, relax, grab your coffee or your running shoes, whatever makes you happy, and let the fun begin. Oh, by the way, come take my hand and let's go. The door's opening now. Hello, everybody. This is Carina again, Break Fear, Find Freedom podcast. Today, I've got a very, very awesome guest, Tahmina Watson. And Tahmina is an immigration lawyer. Well, you know what? Really, immigration is a big, hot topic at the moment. And there's so much fear surrounding it. So let's see where the conversation goes. Hello, Tahmina. How are you today?
Hi, Carina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Tahmina. Let's start a bit about Tahmina Watson, immigration. How did you get into this? And who is Tahmina in just like maybe 5 words or 5 sentences?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. I'm an immigration lawyer in Seattle, Washington, and I reunite loved ones from around the world and also help businesses match talent from around the world as well.
I
And
love
that's
that.
work visas, family visas. But I also am a passionate human rights advocate too. And so I help find solutions in how to get legal representation for the vulnerable immigrants who need desperate help. And currently, one of my projects is to help the Afghan nationals that are, desperately needing visas to be in the United States.
Oh, yes, I love that, Tahmina. Thank you. But can I just take it a step back? Why immigration?
Oh, such a great question. If anything, I didn't want to practice immigration of all things. I was born and raised in London. And then I met the man of my dreams while I was traveling here and visiting. And then after a very lengthy, long distance relationship, we got married and I moved here. And I had to go through the immigration process myself. But I was a barrister in the UK, and you may know what that is, Carina. A lot of people in the US didn't know what that is. And for those of you who don't, it's a trial attorney in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And I moved here and I had to um, requalify, take exams and what have you. But I was living in Washington State and I had a New York license.
Oh,
And that
yes.
limited me in what I could practice. And immigration law is one of those areas of law that you can practice anywhere in the country. So it kept following me until I really just sort of put my hands up and said, okay, I succumb to the world and I will practice immigration law. But I have not looked back. It followed me until I, said yes, because it's my calling. And I love immigration law. I see the direct impact on lives, whether they're a business or an employee or individuals, husband, wife, children, spouses, you name it. And sometimes you see the reward and how it really affects somebody so directly. The very first call where I got somebody a green card, which was so difficult to get, she was a battered spouse. Her US citizen spouse had beaten her to a pulp and really never filed a green card for her. And it was very complicated to get the green card. But once we got that, and I called her to say, hey, your green card is here, she screamed in my ear. I was deaf for a week and I dropped my phone. But that moment is priceless.
Yes.
And that is what keeps me going. And every win, it's an up and down, journey. And you and I will talk about that further. But it's a complicated area of law. It's fast moving in many ways, procedurally, substantively. Yet sometimes it doesn't move at all.
Yes.
But in all of that, there is still, an important role that I play in somebody's life. And what I say is I help with one of the most important things in people's lives, either their livelihoods or their loved ones.
Yes, yes, I love that. And I have to also, again, go back to the notion of this following you, like saying, hey, come on, this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And again, we'll go back to the calling and how we sometimes just ignore it, but the universe won't allow that. So what happened to make you eventually say, okay, you won, I'm not fighting anymore, I'm not resisting anymore, I'm going to do this?
Well, it boiled down to not having a lot of options. The universe is like, well, that's it. You've got to do this. Well, I had like 2 or 3 immigration job offers come my way in those early days. And I was like, not immigration, thank you very much. But I was a lawyer and I in Washington State with limited options at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when this finally came along, I thought, well, let me do this for 5 years and then I'll do something else. But it was day one that I realized it's everything that I wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
I just needed to do it. And then fast forward the clock a little bit further than that. I was working with somebody from whom I learned how not to be a lawyer. And I started my own firm in 2009. And talk about breakthrough fear. I was a relatively new lawyer at the time. And immigration is so complicated that it takes a lot of years to learn this craft. And I was actually really scared to do this on my own. But I have an incredible husband who just keeps cheering me on. And he said, what have you got to lose? Just go and try this on your own. And if it fails, it fails. I'm still going to love you. And I said to myself, well, let me just do this and see what happens. And January 1st, 2009, I opened the doors of Watson Immigration Law. And here I am. I haven't looked back.
Wow. So with the support of, again, with community and the support of your spouse, that made a huge difference. But still, you had to work through that fear, that inner fear within you. So how did you really do that?
That's such a good question, because even if you have support from people, ultimately the job is yours to do. The fear that you talk about within, you've got to tackle that. You've got to overcome it. And the way that I have learned to overcome fear over the last almost 2 decades is to really sort of put that fear aside and then use that anxiety and fear to propel me forward. I find that if I'm able to make a list of items that I need to do, that fear doesn't have space in my head, because then I just have to keep moving, check the boxes. And once I've got to the other end, I realize that somewhere in between the fear has completely disappeared, but it propelled me to get the task done. Now, how many times that has happened? Countless times.
Yes.
Whether it's, it comes as each step you take in your life, these moments come along where you are breaking barriers within yourself, not other people's, objective barriers, but what you can accomplish, what is next.
Yes.
And so starting my firm was a fear factor in and of itself. And then once I started it, how do I get the clients? And once I got the clients, then I was like, well, how am I going to do the work on my own? I need help. Can I pay the person? And that is actually something that has stayed with me throughout, because when you are an employer, your biggest obligation is to your employees, to make sure that they are taken care of. They can pay their rents. They have food on the table.
Yes.
And when I started my law firm, I remember that the person that I was working with didn't pay me for 6 months. In fact, she didn't pay me at all.
Oh,
and
yes.
So I know how that is. And that every year that comes up, but that was one of the bigger challenges. But so I think, as an entrepreneur, and it's, it took me a while to accept that I am an entrepreneur. When you're a business owner, you are an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You've got to think outside the box. And every time you do something that is a little bit different to others, you may or may not have people to sort of brainstorm with, because they can't necessarily see your vision.
Yes.
That there's a fear within that too. Should I do this? Can I do this? But you know what the end goal looks like if you can just get there. So I would say, there are just so many levels of fear that comes up. There are so many different types of fear. Sometimes, you can't even sleep because, there's a fear about how do I respond to this novel question the immigration service is asking?
Yes.
Am I going to be able to do a good enough job for my client who really deserves to be here? But then, talking about fear, the last administration really did inflict fear upon the country.
Yes.
But particularly upon immigrants.
Yes.
And that community came together in a way so that, the strength that everybody had together was able to help them get over the fear, or actually break through the fear. Just like you say, breakthrough. You've got to walk through the fear, because it can paralyze you. And I saw that paralysis. When the previous administration won the election, everybody can remember where they were. It's one of those moments.
Yes.
People will also probably remember where they were for the next week or two, because it was sort of like you're in a daze. You're wondering, how could this happen? And you're afraid about everything, whether it was abortion rights, whether it was climate change, whether it was immigrants, whether it was education, you name it. Whatever people's interests were, there was fear around it. And a lot of people were just, sitting there in paralysis. I was like that for a week. But then I realized I cannot sit like this, not knowing what's going to happen. I have to prepare.
Yes.
And that's when I stepped up and said, okay, I'm going to take all of this fear. I'm going to make it into a ball of fire. I didn't have to. It was already forming within me.
I love that.
And it really charged me ahead. And it enabled me to really be at the helm of leadership. The community needed me. My clients needed me. And I realized that not everybody can actually step up. I think it was that moment when I realized that being a visionary is not necessarily labeled onto you anywhere. It's the actions that you take and the examples that you set for others. Knowing that there are no other examples, you have to go ahead. And so it's been a real learning curve over the last several years, but everything was propelled by fear and anxiety, and sort of using that as my fuel to keep moving ahead.
I love that, because I believe that the fear, you can always find blessings within the fear, but it's also to just actually find those blessings and to stop and to look at the blessings. You mentioned something about writing down your to-do list, and that. So what would you advise? A lot of people are so paralyzed in fear that they don't know where to look, they don't know what to do, and they just lie there. So action makes a big difference, right? What are your ideas of that?
Over time it has evolved. In the early days, I would have my notebook. Not that I don't have it, I still do. But sometimes it's just that one action that you need to take. You don't need to take 10. If you can just get yourself out of bed, sometimes that's an action. I listened to this book called The 5-Second Rule. I forget who wrote it. It was very interesting. And it was at a time when I was like, how do I get to the next step? How do I get to the next step? And she basically said in this book, just count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and get up and do whatever you need to do. What's interesting is that sometimes it is really about putting one foot after another. And what happens in very complex situations, the fear will engulf you in such that you can't even see clearly.
Yes.
And so it is that one action that will help you then see the next step and the next step. There are just so many examples, from starting my law firm to the very complicated cases,
Yes,
the
yes.
previous administration, to even what's happening with immigration, needs for the Afghanistan nationals. There are many layers of it. But one concrete example I can give you is, I wrote a book
Yes.
last year, and it's called Legal Heroes in the Trump Era. And I felt compelled to write it because nobody knew what the election outcome was going to be. And if we were to have a second term of the previous administration, we would all need to step up even more.
Yes.
But people were suffering from fatigue. We were all on a hamster wheel, constantly anxious, constantly depleted of our resources that we can somehow manage to put together.
Yes, yes.
And so I felt compelled to write the book about what lawyers had done over the last 4 years in protecting rights. It allowed me to share my story too. The fear came with publishing the book in the first place.
Yes.
And one of the places I really got stumped was the name of the book, Legal Heroes in the Trump Era. As I was writing the book, I mean, you're in California, you may remember the stories and the news articles about the black cars in Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
And, DHS just using unmarked officers. You suddenly think about the third world countries where that happens. And as I'm writing this book to talk about what lawyers had done, I was engulfed with fear. Do I write this book? Why should I put myself out there? Why am I putting myself out there?
Yes, yes.
Do I want to attract attention to myself? I have 2 little girls. So I had to overcome that fear. But once I overcame that, and I said, if not me, then who? If not now, then when?
Yes, I love that.
And, I managed to get over those fears. But then came the title of the book. And I don't know if you're going to use this video at all, but Carina, I'm just going to show you the book title.
Yes.
It's Legal Heroes in the Trump Era. It's on Amazon.
Thank you.
But what was interesting is that I didn't know if I wanted to use in the Trump era and whether I wanted to have that word on the book title. And so I grappled with that a lot. Should I put that in? And I have a dear friend that I met through, this COVID era. And she talked to me at 6:00 in the morning, several days in a row, to just get me over the fear, and gave me courage. Because if I didn't have in the Trump era, I would not be able to define the lawyers who stepped up within that time.
Yes.
I really needed to define that moment in time for all the lawyers who sat back, were paralyzed for a bit, and then said, okay, I need to do something.
Yes.
And I needed to make sure that people were inspired so that if the time were to come to step up, they would all hear these stories and be motivated to do their part. So it's a very concrete example of the many layers of fears I felt from writing just one book.
Well done for the courage to actually do that, because it takes a lot. Because now people see you and, well, they know who you are, right? And you wouldn't have known what the outcome would have been like. That's true. What happened if you were targeted or whatever? So well done for the courage and for stepping up, right? That takes more courage than anything else. And again, you bounced off the fear, and that's what the theme is. We need to understand that that's what we do, right? That's how we go from one level to the next.
I think so. And I think people often shy away from their potential because of fear.
Yes.
And, all of us have potential to do so much in this world, but it's the fear of what if this and what if that.
Yes.
And, I'm sure fear is keeping me from doing more things. I don't know what they are. I'm constantly looking. But, it's an important emotion to harness. I
Yes.
will share with your audience and listeners that I have started to meditate.
Oh, lovely. Yes.
And I do find that if we have a moment of quiet, it helps us get grounded, take that fear and really think about it. And then that will allow you to think of the next thing that you should do. So I
Yes.
highly recommend that people sit within themselves. And this is not just to break through fear, it's about everything. It's for your well being, your health, whatever it is in your life. As humans, we're always on the go,
Yes.
particularly in America. I love America. This is where my home is, and I wouldn't change anything. But I think we have to mold ourselves into being the best human that we can be.
Yes.
And part
Yes.
of it is to sit with yourself to understand who you are as an individual and where do you want to go.
Yes, I love that. But I find that a lot of people are so afraid of what they'll find. Again, we go back into the fear that they just fill their lives with noise because they don't want to sit down and just listen because they might, I don't know, they might unleash the monsters or they might unleash a wolf, but they also might unleash a beautiful angel. And if they give themselves that time, right? Just to, so what did you do to start meditating? What just pushed
Really,
you over the edge?
what pushed me over the edge was really the constant adverse policies that were coming out of the previous administration. First, there was the Muslim ban. Then there was, all of these raids that were happening. Then the DACA was taken away. Then the separation of children.
Yes.
And what I could see is I couldn't help myself. I was compelled to step up every time. I couldn't sit back. And, it didn't stop me from doing my day job. I still have a law firm, I have a team, I have clients, I'm constantly helping them. But I found that, in my spare time, I was also doing a lot of pro bono work in the community.
Yes.
How do I help this issue, that issue? And there came a point about 7, 8, 9 months later where I realized this is not sustainable. You, as a human, you simply cannot be the hamster on the wheel 24/7 as an anxious, stressed
Yes.
hamster on the wheel, not just a hamster happily running, but an anxious and stressed one. And the previous administration definitely had those motives to keep us stressed.
Yes. Yes.
And I was using an app on my phone called Insight Timer. And I realized, like many people, I don't know if I'm doing it right. Am I doing it right? I'm still thinking, how am I doing this right? And then what pushed me over the edge was really that I was bringing it all at home and I could see my children reflecting my behavior. And the moment I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm a mirror,
Yes.
I have to be a better mirror. And I took lessons. I went to a class for transcendental meditation in, I want to say, early 2018. And I haven't stopped. It took a long time to sort of learn the pattern, get into a pattern, learn that it's okay to think and let the thought come and go.
Yes. Yes.
But it was a profound change in my life because instead of being that anxious, stressed hamster on the wheel, I'm still the hamster on the wheel, but I'm a happier one. I know how to stop the wheel when I need it to stop,
Yes.
and I think that's a skill that has enabled me to be better at leadership, better at doing the cases I need to, file, helping my clients who are all reflecting the same behavior that I was. We're all
Yes.
stressed and anxious. And goodness knows, I mean, COVID has just expanded on the problems that the previous administration had left us with. And so I find myself um, a better person to speak with, to calm my clients down and reassure them. So, I mean, there are probably many other benefits that I'm not thinking about right this moment, but I highly recommend it. And I particularly feel that if you are a leader of any type, you've got to find quiet within yourself for your own benefit. And now one of my mottos has become, I need to be a good mirror, not just for my children, but everybody around me.
Yes, yes. I love that. And again, it takes a lot of courage to do something like that, because it's much easier to be afraid and to sit in a corner and say, you know what, I don't want to be rejected. I'm afraid to be rejected. I'm afraid that someone will target me. I'm afraid that maybe, my peers will hate me because, just like you wrote a book, right? So that takes courage every day to actually show up and say, hey, this is me and I'm okay.
Yeah. And talk about being targeted. I mean, one of the fears I had was absolutely being vocal and being noticed for it. So my team at my office, everybody had a copy of my passport page because, I'm brown. I might be going somewhere, and what's the evidence that I'm a US citizen? I'm not walking around with my passport necessarily.
Yes.
And so everybody had a copy of my passport at the office, just in case they needed to bail me out from somewhere. Luckily, they didn't have to do that. But, your audience has to be one that is thinking about this, and they're looking for tools. And if
Yes.
they're looking for
Yes.
tools, finding the quiet within your mind is one of the first tools that you need to harness,
Yes.
because it will help dissipate the fear. The fear will always be there. Whichever step you're taking next, the fear will be there. You
Yes.
just get better at handling it.
Yes, I love that. And also looking back, how many, with the previous administration, COVID, everything's like upside down at the moment. But surely you can see how it has to make you more creative, has to give you courage. And did it change anything? Would things have been different if there was a different administration? If Trump hadn't come into power, if it was someone else? Where would your life be now?
I don't know. I feel as though the universe has a plan for how things are supposed to unfold, and there's a reason for it. I think if we did have a different administration, I think we probably would have still been complacent as a community.
Yes.
But what we did see was the rise of the people. We saw the rise of people fighting for their own rights, fighting for their friends' rights, their community rights. And that really showed in the election results where we have a new administration.
Yes. Yes.
But I think people need to continue to keep their voices up. And whatever fear they have now, they've got to harness it for the next thing. Because, one of the fears, talking about fears, one of the fears I do have is what would happen with 2024's presidential election.
Yes.
It's not a given one way or another.
Yes. Yes.
And so that fear, that future potential fear, is what makes me think about now. What can I do now to put in systems that could help a potential second, or Republican presidency? Because what we saw was immigration is always going to be a key target
Yes.
for every administration. good or bad. But what we saw was the system was broken and gutted, completely gutted. That it's so broken that it's difficult for this administration to actually, fix easily. They're working on it.
Yes.
But a different administration would come in and go back and make it even more broken. So what I feel is my responsibility as somebody who is helping immigrants is to see, what can I do? You can only do what you can do as an individual. What can I do to help get some, ideas in place, systems in place? What can I do to collaborate with others so that we're using this downtime, so to speak,
Yes, yes.
to make sure we're preparing to make whatever we can a little bit stronger.
Yes. Yes, I'm loving it, because also as immigration, you surrounded by fear all the time, because as an immigrant, if you've come in illegally or you don't have papers or whatever, there's constant fear around those people. How do you just appease that and breathe and say, you know what, we can get through this?
Yeah, that's what I tell them. I'm here, I'm holding your hands, and we'll get through this. And I have an amazing team at my office, and everybody does this because we know, with us being experts on the law itself, and we've all gone through some form of practical issues, we know how complicated this is for somebody who doesn't understand immigration.
Yes.
And what we've seen in recent times are delays in cases. And while waiting for cases, people have died. I have clients who've suffered losses, individual losses. There are times where cases are so complicated, you don't even know how complex they are until you dive into the details and, get to a stage where it shows itself.
Yes, yes.
How do you help the client? Helping the client is our biggest job in their mental state. Yes, we do want to do the best job we can on paper, but making sure that our clients are as stress-free as we can make them. There's an inherent stress that you cannot take away.
Yes.
But as long as they're reassured that we're on the right path, you're not an individual in a broken system. Everybody's in a broken system. There's nothing special about the problem in your case. Everybody's having the same problem. And then we're here to help you along the way. That's the best job that we can do. And I'm so grateful that people trust us to help them, because we will go through the extra mile to really be able to say, okay, please don't stress about this. Often a problem will show up in the middle of the case, and we at the office are like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We are afraid.
Yes.
And we know that we do not want to inflict that fear onto the client. We need to solve the problem before we tell them there was a problem, but we have a fix. This is one of the strategies we use in the office all the time. Okay, we found a problem. Can it be fixed quickly? Yes or no? If no, what are the solutions that we can take? Can we fix it without telling the client? Most times it's a no. But sometimes the problems are so deep that you have to see how it unfolds. And this happens from time to time. And in that situation, we use the fear to help us find the solution. And then we go to the client and first start with, do not be afraid. We've been afraid for you. And here's a solution. And make sure you don't lose sleep.
Yes, I love that. But how do you feel like you've got, immigrants come to you and look at you, I think, as a savior. You're going to save my life. You're going to help me stay here and have my little place in the sun. How do you deal with that responsibility?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've learned that you've got to be really clear with people, especially when you're desperate. You only hear what you want to hear.
Yes.
So all the other things that I might have said might not have registered.
Mm.
And whenever somebody files something, there's an innate hope that it's going to work. So being absolutely clear that this may work, this may not work. We're just going to do this because this is the system,
Yes.
and we're going to hold each other's hands as we get through it.
Yes.
Most of the time, my clients understand that.
Mm.
And the times when I realize they're not quite getting that it may or may not work, I have to tell them multiple times.
Yes.
Now, what people need to understand is I don't have a magic wand. The law is broken, and the law is so old that it hasn't been modernized. And
Yes.
so we have to walk with the system that we have hand in hand to get to the end line. It may not be a straight line, but we can get there more often than not. I help a lot of people with their startups. As a
Oh,
business innovation lawyer, I help people with their startups. They're starting a new company. And, in the modern day, you can just pick up a phone, have a laptop, and boom, you have $1 million business. It happens to a lot of people.
yes.
And when
Yes.
you want to come into the United States, there are no simple systems. And so a lot of times people are in disbelief saying, really, I've got the money for this. My company's doing really well, but there's
Yes.
no easy way to often do that. And so explaining to somebody, yes, it seems very simple. Yes, we want you, but
Yes.
no, it's not easy to get you here, is often difficult for very smart people to understand.
Yes. Yes.
I love working with them because they're so innovative and they're changing so many different things in the world. It energizes me to work with the startups and these brilliant minds, but equally, it's not as easy. But I feel as though I really am offering a service to the people that are changing the world. So I'm often the wind beneath people's wings, and that helps me keep moving forward.
I love that. I love that. It's amazing how a connection, a connection, a good conversation can just energize you for days and weeks or brainstorming and coming up with a solution together is really very powerful. So that's exciting, and obviously you've got a brilliant team behind you, so you've got good support and people who help you.
Yes. And, I think one of the things that really is important for people to understand is you have to be a passionate human being to be able to do this job.
Yes.
And most immigration lawyers are. They deeply care about the law itself, their craft, and the people that they serve. And so, I'm very lucky to have a team like that, but I also am lucky to work with every single person that's come to, receive my help, because each person is a blessing. And even when there is a complicated case, we all learn from it through the fear
Yes.
and to get to the end goal.
Yes. Well, I must commend you because it's very hard. It's very hard to do this, I'm sure, and to be in constant battle almost with people and emotions and the law and how to get through it and negotiate it and loving it is wow. That is something that makes you an amazing human being, Tahima.
Oh, I don't know if I'm amazing, but I really do feel I'm here to do something, and helping people brings me joy.
I love that. Oh, okay. First, before we carry on, where can people find you?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much again for having me and giving me the opportunity. If people want to connect, they can find me on LinkedIn at Tahmina Watson. I also have a podcast called Tahmina Talks Immigration. It's on
Nice.
Apple and Spotify and all the places people find podcasts. So it's Tahmina Talks Immigration. I have 2 books on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and everywhere else. The first one is Legal Heroes in the Trump Era. And the other book came out in July. It's called The Startup Visa. Why don't we have a visa for startup founders? And so if anybody's an entrepreneur and wants to be in the US, that's the book for you. Our website is watsonimmigrationlaw.com, where we also have a blog so people can sign up and learn about the latest news that's affecting our clients. And then we have a Facebook page. I'm on Instagram. I post a lot of photos that I take. I've become a photographer.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and you can just Google me. I mean, I have two columns. I have a bi-weekly column in a national legal magazine called Above the Law. It's every other Tuesday. And then I also am a contributor to Entrepreneur magazine, so they can find me there too.
Wow. That's very, very awesome. Now, I know we're running out of time, but I have to ask you this. I saw your book, The Startup Visa, and that's a very fascinating idea. And, in talking to other people, you always think about something like that. Just tell us a bit about it and your ideas behind it, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. First of all, the book can be found on Amazon. There is also a podcast series to go with the book on Tahmina Talks Immigration, where thought leaders talk about this exact question that you're asking. In a nutshell, a startup visa would be a new visa category so that international entrepreneurs could come to the US and create the jobs that we so desperately need and be the next, big company that, is helping the economy and the world. If you think about America and all the names that we know in every household, Nordstrom, Disney, WhatsApp, during COVID, we've all been using it.
Yes.
They were all by immigrant entrepreneurs or second generation immigrant entrepreneurs. It's really important to understand the contributions that immigrants make to this country. And it's going to continue, but we need to have modern visa systems to do that. And the startup visa will allow that in this country.
I love that. Thank you, Tahmina. One last question. Have you found freedom?
I think I might still be looking, but I might be close to it. I just mentioned that I've become a photographer, and I've become a nature photographer. This is actually the first time I'm publicly talking about it.
Oh, wow.
I've sort of had a fear of talking about this even. I've become a nature and bird photographer. And I also discovered that I can sketch birds. I'm actually pretty good. I'm like really surprised at how good I am.
I love that.
I sketch something and I'm like, I did that. I feel as though freedom is a strong word and it's a notion, and often we sort of get conflated with what freedom really is. But if you can be yourself, that is freedom.
Yes.
And I think I'm getting there.
I love that. And I love the idea of taking photos and sketching them. So when is the coffee book coming out?
Oh, you just exploded my mind. I don't know. I'm working on it. I have this incredible photo I took and sometimes I don't know what's on my lens until I come home. Over the weekend, I caught this beautiful white egret, which is like a heron. And I didn't know this until I downloaded the pictures, but there was a fish right behind it jumping in the air behind the bird.
Wow.
I captured some amazing photos. So you have blown my mind, and I will now think about what my coffee table book will look like. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. I can see it. Beautiful. And then it would be on everyone's coffee table. How cool would that be?
Thank you.
That would be pretty awesome. So, okay, one last question. I know I said one last, but where do you go to take photos?
Oh, I started with my backyard. I started with, oh, what's that bird? And what's that bird? And I started to take pictures with my cell phone. And then I realized they're so beautiful. I want to use a different camera. And so it started early 2021. And by the end of 2021, I now have this telephoto lens, which is, heavier than I can carry. So I'm doing weight training. And I've expanded beyond my backyard. And I'm going to different beaches and parks. And it's just been extraordinary.
Oh, I love it. So maybe you should come to San Diego and see how beautiful it is. Yeah.
I would love that. I just came back from Scottsdale. I went for a podcast conference called She Podcasts Live. And I managed to take photos near the hotel that I was staying at. And I caught all these amazing, amazing birds. And so now I've got the bug. I've got to travel and take different bird pictures. So, I'll let you know if I'm in San Diego. I'd love to say hi and take you bird watching with me.
Oh, no, that sounds awesome. Let's I'll maybe hold you to that, right?
I will hold you too. These days I'm like, oh, you want to meet? Can you go for a sunrise walk? It's changed. It's been transformational for me.
I know, it's beautiful. And it's not only you see the sunrise and the beginning of a new day, but you have the opportunity to snap it and keep it forever. That is pretty awesome, right?
Yeah. And for somebody who's never really walked in sunrise and just preferred to be in bed, it's a pretty big change for me.
Oh, change is good. Oh, thank you so much, Tahmina. This was awesome. I'd love to have you back.
Thank you.
And so we can talk a bit. I know immigration is really important and it's close to my heart because I'm writing the book and all that. But photographs and art and birds and beaches, wow. That's a beautiful conversation too,
oh
right?
my gosh, I'm so grateful you asked about that because I really haven't talked about it publicly. I've been doing this for a year. I've only posted pictures on Facebook and some on Instagram, but not much. They're sort of like, I'm a lawyer. Do I really want to tell people I do this on the side, But I'm coming out of that. Same with meditation. I really haven't talked about it in public much. But I'm realizing that I need to tell people because it's inspiring for others to know that you can be one thing and the other. It's not an and or.
Yes. And now as well in this crazy new world, people are doing so many things. You have to have so many income streams, and it's becoming it's really exciting. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's actually a really exciting time with all the possibilities.
I think so. I say to my family, "Hey, I'm going to go get my bird high." It just keeps me excited and energized for the rest of the day. I'm so grateful I got to share that with you.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so honored that you shared it with me for the first time. Wow, it's pretty cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tahmina. This has been awesome. Thank you. It's been really an honor and a pleasure to have you. And hopefully we'll chat soon.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have an awesome day. Thanks, Tahmina. Bye.
Thank you for listening. And thank you for listening right to the end. Now, if you want to know more about breaking fear and if it's keeping you stuck, check out the quiz. The details are below. Subscribe so you can hear some more of this delicious conversations. And then watch out for my book, The Clank of Chains, which is coming out very soon. Thank you again for being here, and we will see you next time. Bye.